Hi, and welcome to The Regulated Parent. I'm your host, Afshan Tafler, nervous system resilience coach and parent of a hypersensitive, high-needs child. If you're raising a differently wired kid, especially a hypersensitive child with PDA, autism, ADHD, OCD, or other intense needs, this podcast is for you. Here we name the realities and extreme challenges of parenting a child whose nervous system experiences the world differently. You'll gain awareness of your nervous system, shift programming and conditioning that keeps you stuck, and finally find your power to be the calm, connected parent you want to be for your child. You're not alone. Let's begin. We've all been taught that when you're parenting a PDA or autistic child, you need to hold it together. We know how sensitive their nervous system is. We know they pick up on everything we feel. So we tell ourselves, I need to stay calm. I can't lose it. I just have to hold it together. So we do. We push things down. We clamp down on what we're feeling. We hold it in. We contain it all. And when we manage to do that, we actually feel good about it because this is what we've been taught is good parenting. This is what we've been taught as having good self-control. But over time, the more you hold it together, the more something starts to happen inside of you. You either become more exhausted, more depleted, more disconnected, or you cycle into moments where you lose control completely and the anger finally comes out. And then the guilt, the shame, the feeling that you're failing. And you're left wondering, why can't I just stay regulated? Why does this keep happening? So in this episode, I'm going to walk you through why we've actually had this all wrong, okay? Why holding it together is not regulation, and what you need to do instead so you can actually feel more calm, more grounded, and more capable without falling apart on the inside. So let's begin. When I first learned about PDA, which is pathological demand avoidance, and I started to really understand my son's severe threat response, I knew I had to be a calmer parent for him. Okay, that's all I wanted. If I could stay more regulated, then this would help him lower his threat response and access his skills. I felt like so much depended on me being the parent he needed. So when he would escalate over the smallest things, when he would avoid even the most basic life demands, I tried really hard to do the only thing that I knew how to do in those moments. Hold it together. Because that's what I had learned a good parent does. Okay, that's what I had observed my whole life, that when you're in front of others, okay, you don't show how you truly feel. You don't show your frustration, your sadness, your overwhelm. You hold it together. You stay composed, strong, stoic even, no facial expression, cool as a cucumber, even if your insides are on fire. I was a master at this in the outside world, okay? In the corporate world that I used to work in and in front of my friends. I was the one who could handle anything. So I channeled that part of me, okay? That deeply patterned part of my nervous system. Just hold it together. Be strong. Stay calm. Cool as a cucumber. I remember one time when I worked in New York and my boss said to me, Afshan, I can't read your face and I don't like it. You need to speak up more so that I know what you're thinking. Okay, that was me. Even my face was so controlled, so contained that it was almost frozen, right? I was a high masker for sure. So I brought that same strategy into parenting. I thought this will help my son. If I can just stay calm, I can co-regulate him. But what nobody tells you is how much more triggering your child is on your nervous system than anything else in this world. And it's not like I could step away or get a break. At the time, he had stopped going to school and I was with him all day. So my system was being triggered constantly, but still, hold it together. Inside, I would feel this burning rage rise up in my body, and I would clamp down on it, brace against it, try to contain it, control it. I would feel tears well up, tears of overwhelm and exasperation and grief. And again, I would push it down, clamp it down. And sometimes I would walk away from those moments feeling proud, like I did it, I held it together. But over time, with this chronic triggering that I was living in, my system started to break down. Okay, sometimes it would come out in explosions, and other times it turned into exhaustion, okay, or burnout, or this quiet kind of depression. Because on the outside, I was holding it together, but on the inside, I was slowly falling apart. And I see this in so many parents I work with. Okay, we've all learned this pattern. We believe it's our job as parents to not show our emotions, not show our anger, not overwhelm our child. So we hold it all in. We think this is what creates safety. We feel good about ourselves when we can do it. And when we can't, we feel like we've failed, like we don't have enough self-control. Then over time, these same parents come to me with burnout, exhaustion, chronic fatigue, anxiety and stress, cycling into depression, numbness, and wanting to give up. And they say, my child is doing better because of how I'm showing up, but inside I feel like I'm falling apart. Why? Okay, so let's get into first why this makes sense, okay? And why there's nothing wrong with you. Okay, so if you have a PDA, autistic, or highly sensitive child, their nervous system is constantly scanning for safety and danger. Okay, they are incredibly attuned to you, like my son is to me, like a hawk. Okay, so then of course you try to contain yourself, right? Of course you try to stay calm. Of course you try to protect them from your emotional intensity. There's nothing wrong with that intention. Okay, but the way that we've been taught to do it, that's where things start to go wrong, because long term of doing it this way leads to burnout. So let's talk about what holding it together actually is. Okay. So you hear it all the time, right? Just hold it together. Just hold it together. Okay. Most parents think that holding it together means being calm, being strong, being regulated. Okay. But what's actually happening in the body is very different. Holding it together often looks like tightening inside, bracing inside, okay, suppressing inside, pushing emotions down, and disconnecting from what you're feeling in your body. Okay, so many of us are like walking heads, right? We're ahead, and we have no awareness, no idea of this body and what's going on in it until it takes us over. Okay, so that holding it together, right? Where you're tightening, bracing, suppressing, pushing down emotions, disconnecting from what you feel, that's not regulation, okay? That is a nervous system state, okay? And very often the nervous system state, it's called functional freeze, okay? And functional freeze is when your body is still functioning on the outside, okay? You're parenting, you're responding, you're doing what needs to be done, okay? So you're recruiting what's called the social engagement behaviors, but on the inside, you're not truly regulated. You're actually more braced, you're more tight, you're more shut down and numbed out to what's actually happening underneath. So you're holding everything in, right? So it's a mix of like this, there's this activation that's actually happening inside that you may not be aware of, right? Fight or flight energy rising in your body. And then there's a clamp down, a shutdown, a freezing, on a containing, a suppressing it on top of it. Okay, so this shows up as looking calm on the outside, but your system is under stress on the inside. It looks like you're still functioning, you're still parenting, you're still doing what needs to be done, right? Getting through the moment, but internally you're shut down, contracted, containing everything. Okay, so there's this big misunderstanding of self-control, right? Like we think holding it together is a good form of self-control. We've all been taught that it's good to have some self-control, okay? So a lot of parents think that what they're doing is self-control, right? They think, okay, I'm being strong, I'm staying in control of myself, I'm not losing it, right? But what we've been taught to call self-control is actually often controlling ourselves not to feel. Okay. So it's controlling the tears, controlling the anger, controlling the overwhelm, holding it in, pushing it down, trying to stay contained. But this kind of control is a contraction. So it's not a true self control that comes from regulation, from this expansion energy of that there's more of you to hold everything that's happening inside. Instead, it's this contraction, this body tightening, closing and suppressing energy that wants to move. And it's a survival response. Okay. So, what we've been calling self control is often actually self suppression. Okay. But all of us have been taught this way. So don't be hard on yourself here, okay? This is about gaining awareness down to see what's going on. And if you're actually self-suppressing, right? And not like true regulated self-control. Okay. The other thing I want to bring in here is about like being the strong one. Okay. We often think as parents, we have to be the strong one, but that's what can often burn us out too. Okay. And almost every parent who comes to me has this pattern, right? They are the strong one. They are the one who can handle everything, the one who keeps going, the one who holds everyone together. And for most of their life, this has been something they've been praised for. Okay. People have said things like, you're so strong. I don't know how you do it. You always have it together. And on the outside, it looks like strength. But what we're now understanding, both from a nervous system perspective and from modern psychology, is that chronic being the strong one, okay, when you're chronically being the strong one, it often comes at a cost. Because what it usually involves is suppressing your emotions, overriding your needs, okay, pushing through your stress, pushing through stress, right? Pushing through your exhaustion and your needs to rest, staying composed no matter what's happening inside. And when this becomes a long-term pattern, it keeps your nervous system in a state of chronic stress, hypervigilance, or eventually shutting down more towards that burnout feeling. Okay. So what looks like strength is often actually overfunctioning, suppression, and survival. Okay. This is the exact pattern that so many parents fall into when raising a PDA, autistic, or high needs child. You become the strong one. You hold it together. You do what needs to be done. And slowly, without even realizing it, you start to burn out. Okay, so let's understand like why these patterns run so deep. Like we've grown up our whole lives holding it together, suppressing it, holding everything down, and so far we've functioned okay. But now we have these kids who chronically activate us all the time with not much reprieve, and we're functioning in this pattern all the time. Okay, but let's understand that these patterns, they run deep, right? They didn't come from nowhere. So you didn't just decide one day to suppress your emotions and hold everything in, okay? This is a pattern that was learned, right? It was conditioned into us. It was practiced over years, even decades. And it's patterned into us in 3 ways which connect to how we learn to stay safe, lovable, belonging, and successful in this world, okay? So much of what gets threatened in our parenting with our kids is when what they do makes us feel like we're no longer safe, lovable, belong, or successful anymore. Okay. So number one reason why this pattern runs so deep is social conditioning, right? What we were taught is good, right? Good self-control. So most of us grew up in environments where emotions, especially the big ones, okay, were seen as too much, inappropriate, weak, or unsafe. So we learned, keep it together. Don't show it. Be strong. Okay. And this is especially true for women, caregivers, and in high achieving environments. Okay. Like the corporate world I came from that I used to work in, where being composed and controlled wasn't just encouraged, it was expected. Okay. The second reason these patterns run deep is this performance-based identity. Okay. Who we learned we had to be. Okay, so most of us tie our worth, right, to being competent, to being composed, to being in control. And this is like just so deeply inherent in our culture. Okay, so we became the reliable one, the capable one, the one who could handle everything, right? So it also depends on your family dynamics that you grew in, right? And underneath that was a nervous system belief that in order to be valued, I need to stay in control. And then that leads to overfunctioning, suppressing emotions, pushing through stress, till eventually your body cannot handle those patterns anymore and you go into burnout. Okay. Now, number 3 is survival and attachment patterns, right? What felt safe early on. So these survival and attachment patterns with our caregivers. So what did we learn from that experience, right? At some point, our nervous system learned, okay, it's not safe to express how I feel. I need to control myself to stay accepted, loved, and connected. And if I show too much, then something goes wrong. So then what happened? We adapted, right? We learned to mask, to suppress, to stay composed in order to stay connected and in order to stay safe and loved and belong. Okay. And this is where that cool as a cucumber version of you can come from. The one, who could walk into any situation and not let anything show. That was me. And keep in mind, so much of these patterns can be so automatic that you don't even know you're engaging in them. Okay. So it really takes becoming aware in the moment if you are doing this now. And awareness is really the first step towards change. Okay. So this matters for you now because when you understand these unconscious patterns, then something shifts. You stop seeing this as, oh, I'm not good enough. I don't have enough self-control. And you start seeing it as, okay, this is a pattern my nervous system learned. And it makes sense. It makes sense. It learned, right? To survive, to stay loved, to belong, to stay feeling successful. Okay. But oftentimes what got us through the past and able to belong and stay lovable and be successful is not what will carry you through this kind of parenting. Okay. These patterns, they get exacerbated in this kind of parenting. That's for sure. Okay. But the learning then becomes to shift out of these patterns and embrace new patterns and ways of being that will sustain you more for the rest of your life. Okay. So we don't want to stay in these patterns, even though they helped us to some degree, they're no longer helping us anymore. Okay. So shine a light on them, bring awareness to them, notice when you're in these patterns. Okay. And then start to shift into a different way, which we're going to get into next. Okay. So the big reframe here is really, it's not about holding it together. Okay. Let's stop revering this holding it together thing. Look how well she held it together. Okay. Let's let that go. Okay. Because it's not about holding it together. It's about building the capacity. Okay. We're going to move from holding it together to capacity, building capacity to be with what's happening without being taken over by it. Okay. So holding it together is survival based. Capacity is regulation. Okay. So let's get into what capacity actually means. Okay. And what it can look like. Capacity means that you can feel what's happening. You can stay with it. You don't suppress it and you don't act it out. Okay. So it's really the ability to be with the sensations and emotions and activation that's getting triggered inside without holding it down, shutting it down, and without exploding. Okay. And this is something you build over time. Okay. Because ideally, most of us would have learned it when we were younger, but we didn't, right? Unless a parent mirrors this to you that they have capacity for your big emotions or their own big emotions, right? But most of us were mirrored holding it together. That's what we learned. Okay, so this is something that takes time, but you can build it over time because capacity in the nervous system, okay, it comes down to building 2 core skills. One, the first skill is tolerance. Okay, can you stay with what you're feeling without getting overwhelmed and disconnected? Okay, or without needing to shut it down, push it away, or control it in some way. You want tolerance to stay with, right? If we can build tolerance to be in our bodies feel our sensations and emotions and not get so hooked by them, but instead become the curious observer or the watcher of them, okay, then we are building tolerance to be with emotions and sensations without fearing them or being taken over by them. Okay. But if nobody taught us, that they had tolerance to be with our big emotions, then we learn to fear our emotions, and then our tolerance dwindled over time. And this is why we try to hold it together, then blow or pass out in depletion. Okay. And the second thing we need is the skill of processing, right? So, all the activation that comes up, the fight, flight energy, all of the emotions that come up, this is all like energy in motion, right? And can that energy move through your body instead of getting stuck, suppressed, or stored? Okay, because when you're holding it together, you're not processing everything. You're just containing it in a way that it just builds pressure in your system over time. Okay, but when you build capacity to be with, then you can allow the energy to move. You can allow it to complete, to release from the body. So then it doesn't have a long-term negative effect on the nervous system. Okay, now sometimes we cannot do that in the moment with our kids, right? So we can use that skill of tolerance, right? And also a different kind of containment. The word containment here is important, right? Because we think we're containing it, holding it together. But this is a different kind of containment where we actually hold enough space and safety for what we are feeling. We help it feel safe. That's the containment part as well. We help it feel contained and safe. And then later we can process and release what was coming up, right? When we have more space to ourselves. Okay, but sometimes we can work with that intense fight or flight energy as well. We can contain it enough to work with it so it doesn't get so big and take us over. And then we move our bodies in a safe way to get it out. Okay. So this is a different kind of containment, right? Not the one that we think that we should be doing, which is holding it together. And this deserves mentioning because many of us try to contain our reactions by holding it all in, and then this contracting against what's happening inside. So we're contracting against it. But there is a truer way of containment that brings safety instead of resistance to what is happening inside. Okay, this is the kind of containment that we're working towards. Okay, not the kind that holds everything in, but the kind that creates enough safety in your body to be with what's happening inside of you. Okay, so think of it this way, like how you contain a baby. A baby is like crying and flailing and they're so dysregulated. So you pick them up and you contain them with your arms and this felt sense of safety, like I'm here, you'll be okay, you're safe. This is the kind of containment you want to bring to yourself, the kind that can hold space for whatever is getting triggered inside of you and then bring safety to it. Okay, so what does this look like in real life? Okay, what this looks like in real life, okay, this can vary really from situation to situation and from person to person. But sometimes it can look like feeling yourself, like you go into the pattern, you feel yourself clamping down on your reactions, right? And so it can look like feeling yourself do that and then having enough awareness to let go of being the composed one, right? And instead allowing yourself to feel what's happening underneath, maybe putting a hand on your heart, or maybe just orienting to the present, coming out of what's happening in your body to the present room and noticing and naming 5 to 10 things that you see to give yourself a cue of safety. Okay. Sometimes it can look like crying in front of your child because you can't hold in the tears anymore, right? But then you're staying connected to yourself and the present moment, right? So you're still here with your child. You're not going away. And you may say something like, I'm feeling a lot right now. I'm okay. I'm still here for you. Okay. So you're supporting the feelings while staying present enough to help your child see that you are still here and okay. Okay. Or it can look like feeling anger bubbling up and using some sort of movement to help it safely discharge and release from the body. Like a full body shake off can help, or doing some pushing against a wall. Okay, you may say to your child, okay, there's a lot of energy in my body and I need to move it, right? So this is not losing control. This is capacity to be with what is, hold space for what is, and take action in a safe way to help release it from the body in real time if you can. And then what your child learns from this is when you're able to have more capacity for your reactions. Okay, because remember, every time your child reacts, you're going to react inside. This is, human design. This is part of the design. And then you're going to feel their big reactions inside. Then your own personal stuff's going to get triggered inside, right? So the more capacity you have for that full reaction that's holding yours and theirs inside of you, and work with that instead of holding it in, then your children actually learn how to work with their activation too. Like really no words needed here. Seriously. They learn through mirror neurons. They learn through the felt sense, through resonance, how people can feel each other. Okay. So they learn, okay, emotions are safe. Emotions can move, and that my parent can handle what they feel. That means that they can handle what they feel. Okay. So your child doesn't just learn from your calm face. They learn from your capacity. They learn from watching you feel something, stay with yourself, and move through it without collapsing or attacking. But when you're holding it together through suppression, your child may still feel the tension underneath. Okay, like oftentimes it works, right? If you're good enough at holding it in, it can work to a certain degree, but it's also can be a bit confusing for the child, right? Because they're sensing something off, but they don't know what it is. And then what gets modeled to them is like this holding things in, disconnecting from our emotions, and this internal pressure that they feel on some level, right? So we really want to shift out of that functional freeze state. So what we're doing from a nervous system perspective, like when we change this pattern from holding it in to instead having more capacity to be with and truly contain and process our reactions, is we are helping our bodies shift out of this deeply held functional freeze pattern that sends so many of us into burnout. Okay. True regulation is different. It's being with, it's feeling, it's allowing, it's processing. And this is what actually builds resilience. And this is what actually helps your child to learn regulation as well. No words needed. Okay, so what we're doing here is we're moving from holding it together to instead truly feeling safe within yourself. Okay, so the big shift in both mindset and the way we see it, and also the way we embody it, is to shift from holding it together and using this form of self-control that is eliciting a stress response to instead developing capacity to be with what's happening inside so that you can help yourself feel safe within it. Okay? So when you build capacity, everything changes. Okay, everything changes when you build capacity. When you start to feel more choice. Okay, you start to feel your true strength. Like it feels so good when you have this capacity to be with everything that is and to learn how to like work with it and release it. This true strength and this true power. You feel empowered. Okay, that comes through, and you feel more capable, which is like one of the number one things that most parents want to feel, right? More capable as a parent. And not because things aren't hard, but because you know how to be with them now. Okay? You know how to work with what's happening inside of you. You know how to let it move through your body instead of storing it, burying it, or exploding it onto someone else. Okay? You're no longer holding everything in, waiting to collapse or explode, living in survival. Instead, you become someone who can feel deeply, stay grounded, move through activation, and meet your child from a place of real regulation. Okay, you don't need to learn how to control yourself better. You need to learn how to be with yourself differently. Okay, that's the goal. Be with yourself differently in a way that where you have capacity and can truly contain and be with and hold space for what's happening inside of you. And I believe so much of the reason that we have the kids that we do is to learn how to embody this new way of being, right? One that only helps us to feel like we can handle this life, and even do well in this life with these challenges. Okay. But also one that this way of being, right, that ends up having this ripple effect on changing the world around us to become a more truer and a more authentic and more compassionate place to live. Okay. So our kids are really challenging us to do the work, but this has a huge ripple effect on the world around us. So this work is not easy, right? That's for sure. But if you can see the real gains from doing this hard inner work, okay, then life becomes so much more fulfilling, even if the challenges are still there. So remember, you're moving from holding it together to now having capacity instead. So if this spoke to you, if this helped you in any way, please comment, please share with others. Really love to hear your comments. And I'm sure there's other parents who may need to hear this messaging too. Thank you. Thanks so much for listening to The Regulated Parent. If this episode helped you feel seen, understood, or a little less alone, please consider sharing it with another parent who might need it too. And if you'd like more nervous system insights and support, head to illuminateyou.ca, where you can download my free ebook and video series. Until next time, be gentle with yourself. You're doing brave and meaningful work.